Hello, everyone. I want to give you a little update and just some suggestions for the things you have remaining this semester with your sort of bigger assignments. So, I want to talk about the Her Story paper and then the Superwoman project that you are going to be presenting the last week of class. Um, so, first, to talk about the Her Story paper, which is due a week from today. This is Wednesday, June 3rd, so it's due next Wednesday on the 10th. If you haven't gotten started on that, you definitely will want to start working on that ASAP, because if you haven't looked at the parameters of the assignment yet, you have to interview three women, preferably three women, and preferably three women in your family that are in the age range of the 50s, their 60s, and then 70 and older. I want to talk a little bit about if you don't have a family member in any of those age categories, then you're welcome to and you should talk to someone that does fall in that category. So, like, let's say you don't have a relative that is older than 70 that's living that you can talk to, then talk to maybe a best friend, their relative, or if you know, like a really good family friend who happens to be in that age category. But it is important that you have someone in those three distinct categories, not two in the 60s and one in the 50s, or everyone in the 50s, because the idea here is that you are interviewing them and talking to them specifically about their experience growing up and playing sports. And so if you don't talk to the women in those distinct different sort of generations or decades of living, then you will not really see how, through these women's stories, the progression of women's sport development. So please make sure that you do your best to find women in those three different categories. If you're really struggling and you have questions about someone who might work for that specific need, please just shoot me a message and we can talk about it. Or if you need some suggestions on someone in one of those categories, again, shoot me a message and we can talk about it, because I have women I could connect you with, right? Obviously the coolest part is if you can do it with women in your family, because it's obviously like the familial change and progression in sport experience for the women in your family. So that's what makes it really fun, if you can find people in your own family. But again, if that doesn't work out, if you can't, then let's work to find someone that would work in the distinct categories, because the age categories are really more important than the family connection. So make sure that you have women in those different age brackets. Now, if you haven't looked at the assignment link, and I have now moved it to next week, so you'll find all the information about the assignment there. And within that link, you'll see like the paper outline, what you need to do to write the paper. So you'll see all the components that you need to have in the paper. And then you'll also see another document that is the questionnaire that you can use when you talk to the people, the women in your family. So you might be, if you're wondering, like, what should I ask them? How do I talk about sports? Just use that as a guideline. Use that questionnaire as a guideline, and ask all the women the same questions, because again, that's how you get to compare and contrast their experiences. Now, I'm going to get the question from people, like, what happens if, like, my grandma didn't do anything when she was growing up. She didn't do any sports. Right. That's probably going to be a lot of your experiences. The women in the 70 age bracket and higher, there's a good chance that many of you will encounter women in your life, or the women that you talk to in that age category, that didn't do any sports growing up, or they did everything very recreationally. That's fine. Then you talk about, what did they do to fill their time? How did they pass the time? What hobbies did they have? So ask them the questions about playing sports. If they didn't play sports, then ask them what they did do. If they didn't play sports, ask them if they would have had the opportunity to, what would they have enjoyed doing? Do they feel like they missed out on it? Kind of ask them about that, because that's important too, to this chronicle that you're creating about the women and their past experiences in sport as a youth and beyond. So you don't have to dig and find someone who that's in your family in all the age categories that played sport. The idea here is that you're realizing like they didn't maybe have the same opportunities as women do today, okay, or you did growing up, or however you want to look at it. Now, for those of you, the guys in our class, you will need to also, you might find yourself interviewing a fourth woman, um, because you have to compare and contrast those three women with a female's experience today in sport. So if you have a sister or a neighbor or a girlfriend or someone close to you that you want to interview and ask, that would be great. If you feel like you have a pretty good sense because like you grew up around, you played sports, and by that you learned about the female experiences and could see like what they experienced as part of their sport experience. You could sort of gain, or you could use that insight as part of your compare and contrast. So you may not necessarily have to interview a fourth woman, but you might, if you just want to gain some additional insight or kind of hear from them what their experience has been like. So that's up to you, because it's a little unfair if you have to like fully interview four people, but you're not, you haven't lived that experience from a female perspective. So it might give you some additional insight that you maybe didn't catch on to or realize. So I think that's pretty much that paper. Betty asked yesterday if there's a page requirement. I don't put a page requirement on it. I don't put a minimum or a maximum because I find that if you're going to do a good job and you've interviewed these women and you are able to tell their story, it takes about 3 pages to do that, because between an introduction, talking about each woman, and then comparing and contrasting to today's female athlete and a conclusion, it takes about 3 pages. And I would say that that's probably minimal. Most people, or not most people, some people get into 4 pages. Sometimes people get into 5 and 6. It really depends on how much of the story they want to share, how much of the story they learned from doing the interviews with the women and their families. So, that's why I don't put a page requirement, because I don't want to shortchange you from telling the story if you have a long story to tell. And I also, if you didn't get much, like if all 3 women didn't really play sports and have much of a sport experience, you wouldn't have a lot really to share other than to tell me what they did in place of not having the opportunity to play sports, or not choosing to play sports if they had the opportunity to do so. And so then your paper just doesn't tend to be as long. So no, I don't have a page minimum maximum. Right till you feel like you've covered the requirements of the paper and you've told these women's stories. I think one of the best parts about this assignment is getting the chance to sit down and talk with these women in your life. So please do everything you possibly can to make this a face-to-face conversation. If you are able to and are in a position where you're spending time in person with these women, please sit down and have a conversation with them. If you are not able to do that, whether you're still in stay-home orders, or you are trying to self-quarantine still, or quarantine for health reasons, or maybe your relative is, then try to do a FaceTime or a Zoom call. We're all comfortable with those these days. And at very minimum, a phone call. So if you can't do a video, I really want you to stay away from just like an email exchange, because you miss so many nuances and you miss so many opportunities to elaborate, ask more questions about something when you go through email. It's just not as fulfilling, in all honesty. So try really hard to do this voice to voice, if not face to face or in person. And please allow yourself to ask more questions than what is on the questionnaire, because the questionnaire sheet that I give you is truly just meant to be a way to make sure that you're covering kind of all the same parameters with each woman. But you might find that some of them, with their experiences, it's valuable or worth listening to more, or having more questions to ask. So So please feel free, go off script, if you will, or feel like you can, go away from just the strict like one questions that are on that page. Um, so yeah, so enjoy it. I mean, it is. I do find that the students really love the opportunity to talk with these women and their family, and a lot of times, most students find out something they didn't know before in their family, and so have an open, have an open mind about going in and having these conversations, and realizing that it's an opportunity for you to find out new things about your family, and enjoy the process of putting this paper together. So that's the Her Story paper. It's due a week from today, June 7th or June 10th. Sorry, if you haven't gotten started on it, you hadn't looked at it yet, and all of a sudden you're realizing like, whoa, I have to do interviews, and you need more time, then take more time to do it. I would much rather you take the time to have these conversations with these women and put your paper together well and do them and honor them and do it justice than just to get it done for a deadline, right? Because again, remember, like I said yesterday or on Monday, the deadlines are mere suggestions. They really are. They're pretty much just suggestions. So really, everything ultimately is due by that last Friday of the 6th week of this class. So, if you need more time because you need to get in touch with people and figure out how you're going to sit down and talk with them, then take the time to do that, because that is the most special part of this assignment, and really to me is the most important part. I mean, obviously I want to read about it, but I want you to enjoy the time you get to spend with these women and learn about their experiences. Okay, so Her Story paper. One thing that's not a mere suggestion in terms of deadlines is your final project, because that you have to do a presentation, and so that has to be done on the date that you have been assigned. And so, just as a reminder to you, on the 17th, which is Wednesday, the 17th, it's Aline, Emily, Jacob, Christy, Caitlin, and then Jillian. There's 6 of you on that date. And on Friday the 19th, it's Taylor, Allie, Miles, Betty, and Nolan. So there's 5 people. I want to remind you that you obviously you must attend and have to be at the Zoom session for the date that you are assigned, and participate and listen to everyone's presentations on that day. But you are very welcome to, and I would love to have you join us on the other date as well. So feel free to also come on the alternative date to learn about all the women that are going to be highlighted. But if you don't, remember I did try really hard to make quite a diverse group for each day. So you're going to learn either way about lots of different athletes and their experiences in sports and different sports. But you are going to miss out on some cool ones if you don't come the second day, just because there's so many amazing women to understand and learn about. So, feel free to join us, and and then remember that you'll be writing a reflection on just your. So then again, if you only are responsible for writing a reflection on just the day that you observe or you listen to. So again, if you come to both, you don't have to write reflections on both, but just the day that you're responsible to attend. But again, it'll be fun for you to do that. It will be a Zoom call, like I said on Monday. So I don't have it up right now, but when we get to that week, in 2 weeks from now, I'll have a Zoom link under both dates that you can then just go click on and then join us on the call. Okay, with this assignment, I will if you want an idea about what would be good, like a good layout, I can send you a like an example from a past student. Now I will tell you that in the past, students have done one Superwoman, mostly because when I have a class of 36 people, if everybody did 3, that would be a tremendous amount of women for the students to remember and to feel like they're really actually learning about some of the greats in these sports. You'll see, but you'll at least see how they highlighted one woman. And while you're not going to do as many slides on all of your athletes because you only have 10 minutes to talk about 3 athletes, you'll at least see how they highlighted just the very, like the very basic, not very basic, but the most important information about that athlete's like career and experiences and achievements. Okay, so if you want an example, I'm happy to share one with you. But you don't. I mean, feel free to let your creative juices flow, and you come up with how you want to present them. You can, if you want, present them one at a time, or you could present them together and sort of tell their stories and interweave them by, sort of all 3 women at the same time, giving their background, and then talking about their sports, and excuse me, and then talking about their achievements. It's truly up to you. I was loose on those parameters because I want you to use your creativity. But again, if it's a little daunting to you, you feel a little intimidated by that, let me know, and I can provide you specifically with an example to follow for that. When you give your presentation, I just want to sort of make give you a suggestion, and I put it in the assignment outline as well, that you prepare something to use for when you give your presentation. So don't just read off the slides. Number one, you shouldn't have that much text on your slides, so you shouldn't just read off a slide. Two, it's a little distracting that this information you put on the slide is the same thing exactly that you're reading, because it feels like you're like reading a book to us, right? So we don't want to sit there and read along with you on a screen. So please don't do that, because that's distracting. It's distracting to listen to a presenter who's literally reading things off of a screen, right? So prepare a script for yourself. You don't necessarily have to read exactly word for word from the script, or you might want to read from the script to make sure that you stay within your time frame, and that you cover all the information that you want to. So, but I definitely think, like, an outline or the additional things you want to highlight that you didn't put on the screen because you didn't want to be too text heavy on the screen, I think is a really good way to think about what you're going to talk about when you introduce and highlight your athletes to the class. Okay, so think about the text on these screens being truly like the most imperative things to have on the screen, and the additional things that, fight to put those additional things on the screen and use those as your script, right? So if they were a 6-time Olympic gold medalist, that you don't put every single year and every single location of those Olympics, but you say 6-time gold medalist on the screen, and then you say that was when she competed in the 2012 games in London and the 2016 games in Rio, right? She had 4 in London and 2 in Rio, right? So you can say that instead of putting that on the screen. So be minimal with your text. Be generous with your photos, because we want to see, that's like the funnest part about these presentations, is seeing those action photos and seeing these women in competition. So be generous with your photos and be conservative with your text. Like, be edit, okay? And then with that, if you want me to take a look at your presentation before you actually give it, please send it to me. I'm happy to look at it, especially if you want me to like edit for grammar, typos, or accuracy, right? Please do that. I've had students put pictures of athletes that aren't the right pictures, so because that can happen. It's easy to have happen. You click on a link, especially if it's an athlete that wears clothing that covers partially or all of their face, right? Like skiers or even swimmers when they have their goggles and their swim cap on. So I've had students put wrong pictures up before, so it's not a terrible idea to have me review it. I know most of you will be working on yours up until the night before you give the presentation, but if you happen to get it done a couple days ahead of time and you want me to look at it, I'm happy to give a quick look over. I would probably suspect your slideshow is going to be about 10 slides long. I mean, if you have 3 women and you do a couple of slides for each of them, and then, maybe a third for 1 or 2 of them, depending on like if they're past their career, if they've passed away and there's all these posthumous acknowledgments that they've gotten or awards that they've gotten, and an intro slide, and conclusion slide. You're probably going to have about 8 to 10 slides. And then don't forget that you need to have your reference slide as well. So all your references should be on your very last slide. That would give you that. I'm not counting that one in your presentation number. So 10 might be pushing it, because that, if you think about a 10-minute presentation, that's like 10 minutes a slide, although one is going to be like your intro slide, like your cover slide. So you want to be thinking about that too, like, okay, how am I going to progress through these slides, and make sure I give time to each of the screens. So anyway, so be thinking about that as you're putting everything together with that, okay? Okay, so those are the 2 kind of big things, right, that you have coming up to finish out the semester. I do just quickly want to talk about the discussion board for this week. For last week, there's like 4 or 5 of you that haven't commented on your classmates' posts. You need to do that by midnight tonight, so midnight Wednesday, June 3rd. You need to finish that. So please get in there and do that. And then I'll have a little survey up for you to kind of vote on who had some of the best kind of like captions or like little posts. So I'll put that up by tomorrow. Okay, so that'll finish out last week's discussion board. And then hopefully you've been working on your discussion board for this week. So you can post whenever you're ready for that. That is up, and you can post whenever you're ready for that. So you all have your sport and your athletes. Post that whenever you're ready. And then remember, you need to comment on 5 people, right? So essentially half the class. You have to comment on 5 people's posts about what you think about those athletes that are highlighted. You should look at all of them, because you will learn about pioneers in each of these 11 sports. So please make sure you look at all, and then comment on at least 5. But you can comment on as many as you want. Okay, again, like 5 is the minimum, but you can do as many as you want. So I think that's it from me. If you have questions about anything I addressed, if I missed something, I tried to be pretty thorough, but if I missed something, let me know, ask questions. Otherwise, I'm not sure that, I mean, maybe next week I'll have a video for you, like a quick video that I'll send to the group message, but really, if not, I probably won't see you, or I will plan to see you the last week we have class together, on June 17th and 19th for your presentations. I'm really looking forward to them. Just all the amazing, wonderful women that we'll be talking about. So looking forward to it. Enjoy the rest of your week this week. And we'll see you on our Moodle page through the work that you provide. So take care, everybody. See ya.